There it is. All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We have returning guests. Well, a returning guest and then a guest. I don't know, something like that. We're going to have a lot of fun chit-chatting and figuring out what makes thruples work. Here we go. Let's have some fun.
Practicing Polyamory. Real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to this beautiful Wednesday. Before we jump in and chat with our guests today, I want to quickly remind everybody that we do 3 shows every week. Okay, except this week I missed Monday, but whatever. We're open for questions. If you have questions about your relationships, or if there's a topic you'd like to hear discussed on the show, slide into my DMs and let me know. Follow us on all social media platforms, especially Facebook and Instagram, at Practicing Poly 8 everywhere, and send me a message. Let me know what you want to talk about. Don't forget to enable notifications on YouTube and Facebook. Join us for the live recording where you can get your questions answered live on the spot. And as always, I want to remind you, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a welcome guest to be on the show. We're here to share our imperfect stories, and I want to get as many voices as possible to speak here because I know that the more stories we hear, the more others will see us in themselves, and the more representation we have, the more we can strengthen our community. So go to practicingpolyamory.com and sign up today. All right, that's my spiel. Now to the best part of the show, introducing our guests. Our guest today joined the show way back in March and shared her story with us, along with a ton of wisdom around should language, taking time for self-care, overcoming self-doubt, and a deep dive into what evidence-based psychology means and how it's applied in practice. She also shared her story of discovery that she and her husband were non-monogamous, both wanted to be child-free, and both fell in love with another wonderful woman to form an ethical triad. As a sex-positive therapist who works with LGBT, kink, and non-monogamous clients, I'm excited to hear more from our guest about how her background and education influenced her journey. And as a special treat today, we get to hear from both of the ladies in the trio and get a part 2 to their story. Joining us today out of Colorado Springs, welcome back to the show, Dr. Rachael Meir and Casey Kirshner. All right, just got to get that energy going. Good afternoon, ladies. Thank you both so much for hanging out with me today and spending some time. Rachael, I did get a chance to chat with you before, and I kind of introed you. So I'm going to start with Casey and ask Casey to kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Casey Kirshner. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with my boyfriend and girlfriend who just happen to be married. I do digital marketing for work, and I've been doing that for a few years. Before that, I was a TV anchor and reporter. Cool. Basically kind of got into polyamory by accident. I don't do it this way, but I was raised in a pretty conservative community and with a very conservative upbringing. And whenever I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and when I was living in Colorado, I figured out that I might like girls. And so I started kind of experimenting with just my sexuality, trying to find myself. Fell into kind of a triad relationship a few years ago. And I wouldn't say it was necessarily done right. And it ended pretty badly. I kind of swore off of polyamory for, indefinitely. But then through online dating, I happened to come across Rachael and Aaron's profile. I was like, man, they seem very interesting. And so I pretty much just evaluated it. Yeah, gave it a second shot, evaluated, and decided that I actually love this way of loving. As a bisexual woman, that I discovered about myself, I love having both a male and female partner. I'm glad that I gave myself a second chance too.
And I'm sure Rachael and Aaron, right, are as well. So, Rachel, I want to hear kind of your side of the story. How was it that you all met? I just read like a quick little article. There was something about Mexico.
Yeah.
Can you tell me? Can you tell me the story?
Yeah. So Aaron and I have been together for almost 21 years, married about 15, and we had worked our way up the career ladder, kind of got sick of the rat race and decided to quit everything and move to Mexico.
Hell
and
yeah.
So we were living as expats in Puerto Vallarta. At the time, we had been there for about 3 years. Prior to moving, Aaron and I had experimented in sort of the lifestyle swinging community more than anything. That wasn't fulfilling. There was something about a deeper connection, relationship, emotional connection with someone that we were looking for. And so during the time in Mexico, started to even have talks about polyamory, learn more about polyamory, talk about unicorn hunting and couples privileges, and if this was something we were going to do, how we do it right, and researching and educating ourselves. And so we were back home. Well, so we had actually created some dating profile sites, both in Mexico and in the United States, because we would kind of go back and forth between both. And ideally, if we were going to meet someone who would be open to travel and adventure, because we would love that life. It's the only reason I started right. Exactly.
Well, it's certainly more enjoyable than my average day.
And it was on Bumble, and we had put our profile up very, very clearly, explicitly stating that we were married, but looking to form an equal ethical triad with someone who was potentially also interested. And we connected with Casey, and about 12 days after meeting and the sparks flying, and we all kind of dug deep as to what we wanted, what our values were, what we were looking for. We were open and honest in communication from the get-go. Aaron and I decided that we were going to move back from Mexico to give the relationship a shot, a viable opportunity to thrive. And here we are. And then COVID hit, pandemic hit. And so we're still in 2 years. We're doing all right.
There you go. And a COVID year is basically like 7 years. It's like dog years.
Yeah, seriously.
But hang on.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Did you say 12 days?
Yeah, pretty much. 12 days after knowing Casey, we had made the decision that we were going to be moving back from living abroad after 3 years. Because
exactly.
Seriously, it wasn't fair for us to ask her to uproot her life and move. For us, Mexico, that just was not. And if we tried to do it long distance, I think it's hard enough already making a triad work, that would have, I think we all knew it wouldn't have succeeded.
And I don't know if you know anything about Puerto Vallarta, but it's this like beautiful, tropical, like oasis of wonderful. I actually visited them because they had to go back to Mexico to wrap things up. And so I visited them in Puerto Vallarta for about a week. And I kept saying like, listen, I think I'm pretty great, but like, I don't think I'm that great. But
I mean,
we're down.
I'm over here like that's a hit or miss. Like, okay, let's move back to the States because that's where, you know, most of our families are, I'm guessing. But like Puerto Vallarta is beautiful. Like, why wouldn't you want to live there?
Gorgeous.
she wants to get back. We'll get there eventually. We don't talk about it.
Get there eventually. Okay. There is one thing that I wanted to ask you about, though. As you were navigating this, as you're putting your profiles together, you are a couple who was looking for, you know, someone to join your. Basically, what I'm trying to get to here, without, you know, whatever, is unicorn hunting and, you know, couples privilege. Like, this seems like a really good conversation. There's a lot of meat that we can chew on here. So let's get into that. When setting up your profile, Rachael, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to jump to Casey and kind of ask you like the other side of it. When setting up your profile, Rachael, what were the discussions that you and Aaron were having to make sure that you were being ethical and not like unicorn hunting?
Right. So I think the biggest thing is, even though we had a long-standing history and we had a really, really good, solid, committed relationship, we were going into this knowing that no matter what happens, we're now 3 individuals coming together. We're going to maintain the history that he and I had. You can't discount that. But everything that we had always known or done together, or even the fact that
we weren't going to survive this together. It wasn't us or nothing. We have to start fresh, and we have to be able to respect that each individual person coming in the relationship has their own needs, and we're going to disentangle ourselves as much as possible from how we've always done it as a couple to I do it this way, Aaron does it his way, Casey does it this way, and how do we mesh that together for 3 people?
And Casey, from your perspective, as you're going through profiles, and you had already had one not so great experience with a couple, what precautions were you taking, if any, to make sure that you weren't being unicorn hunted? And when you were getting into this relationship with Rachael and Aaron, like what were the things that were going through your mind?
Yeah, so I think that there's a series of considerations, and one was the fact that you kind of have to know that we were very lucky in the fact that like I hit it off with Aaron pretty much the same way I hit it off with Rachael. Like we fostered and developed those relationships, but I think we all kind of knew going in that if for some reason something didn't jive or one side of it fell out, it wasn't going to be probably the end of the world. I mean, I think that we all had the same goal and we wanted to strive to make that work. But part of the reason they call it unicorn hunting is because it's mythical, like it doesn't exist. I think you have to be very lucky, and you have to put in a lot of effort to make sure that it is done ethically, and you're giving that respect to like the third person. The precautions, I think, having my history was, I wouldn't put anyone through what I had to go through. But I do think that it gave me a really good perspective on how to do it right. And for me, like something about the triad relationship was always something that was particularly interesting for me, and it kept me interested and involved in a way that like whenever I was only dating mono, like, one man or one woman or whatever, it didn't tend to like keep my interest as much. And so this is something that was very exciting for me, but also just really keeping things in perspective. And I think I communicated a lot about what I had experienced before, what I learned. And I think the biggest thing that I super appreciated was that Rachael and Aaron had done a lot of research. They kind of knew what it was going into this, and had their own considerations that really just kind of opened up the door for our relationship to form pretty organically, but also in somewhat a prescribed way to make sure that we were all doing the right things or the ethical things, the respectful things.
And if it's okay, I might even add, because the pieces that were the red flags and that she spoke openly about when we first met were like, she didn't get to sleep in the middle in the bed, or she was always the one in the backseat in the car. To me, that was like, are you freaking kidding me? That's like, never, I wouldn't even feel like a good human being to anyone, a friend, or, well, not that a friend's going to sleep with us in the bed, but, in a car, whatever. Like I'm always offering that in equality and just relationships. It felt like that was so absurd or extreme to me. But as much effort as we tried and knew about this and talked about it and came in trying to figure out how to make this as ethical, there are little things that you don't even recognize, and they will come up. And I think that couples privilege is something that there's always got to be an awareness of. And Casey, as maybe the third person, which I don't even like that term, right? That in and of itself sounds like there's a hierarchy or difference of some sort. But she was able to point out things that, again, 20 years of history, sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. But luckily for us, we're wanting to be aware of that and make changes and facilitate how to make it feel so that there isn't that.
I love that. I love that the openness of communication is there, the willingness and ability to bring these things to the table to both of you, or to all of you, I guess. So I'm curious about some of those things that have come up. What are some of the ways that you all have worked together to deconstruct that couple's privilege?
So on what feels like the simplest level, but can really become problematic quickly, or just the way that you live life. So again, starting at age 18 up until almost 40, how we go to the gym, our gym schedule, and the way that we cook and shop, and the way that we clean the house, or what we view as appropriate dog raising. I mean, it's more that it just melded into a sort of a unified or a similar way of thinking, not even because our way is a better way. It's just we both kind of fell into or found that pattern between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming into Casey's house and the way that she does things, and she doesn't want to go to the gym. She wants to have a snuggle day, and really.
So the two of you moved into Casey's house.
We did.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then COVID hit. So we were all, and I was living, I was a single woman before that. So I was living in a 2-bathroom townhome, and that got
fast.
Very cozy, very quickly during COVID. So we're sitting in our new house because we had to buy a new house to accommodate for the room.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
An example at the wedding.
Oh yeah. So, and just like she said, it was just the little things. And one situation specifically was we were at a wedding of friends of mine, and had talked to them. They knew the bride and groom, and a few other people knew about the relationship. And so they were like, of course, like, bring your partners. We'll give you a +2, which was super great. And like, massive kudos to anyone who accommodates for things like that. But we were at the wedding, and because not everyone knew, we didn't want to outwardly be like PDA or whatever. We kind of went into it knowing that, okay, this is Casey and Casey's roommates, just not
to detract from the wedding, and
exactly
sure.
Keep it easy. But at one point, I looked over, and Rachael and Aaron were holding hands, and I immediately felt very a little hurt, just because this is a wedding for my friends, and I brought them as my guests, and they could hold hands, and I couldn't because they were everyone knew that they were married, but we didn't have this, and so it was definitely. We drove home, and I was clearly bothered, and we had a whole conversation about it, but. Ultimately it's you have to have some grace for, I understand that they've been together for 20 years, and it's just natural for them. It's it's a habit. They don't even think about it when, we're just holding hands because we've been a married couple for however long. And so it was just things like that of just, bringing the awareness, and they've always been super, super understanding whenever I'm like, okay, or the way we clean the house. I'm like, they're like, well, this is how we do it. And I'm like, well, but this is how I do it. So with grace, all of it has been, it's been really good. And with each one of those conversations, I find that it just makes things stronger, that we're in a better place for talking about it and connecting over it. And just being aware.
When those conversations are happening, when they're going well, when they're, again, bringing things to the table over and over and over again. And I definitely think that's the key, right? Communication is always the key.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
Exactly.
Seriously, though, that our relationship would never, ever work if we didn't. We communicate again. We over communicate. We communicate on the back end. It's something that we joke that if normal monogamous relationships communicated as much as we do, or the way that we do, divorce rates would just plummet because you would just talk about everything. So it takes the effort.
You're not wrong. I mean, there's something about the way that polyamorous folks communicate with their partners, because we've been taught that we have to, right? We have to keep these communications, these lines of communication open. We have to talk about all of these different things because we don't have the standard playbook, I guess. When it comes to monogamy, it's just, this is kind of how it goes, right? The relationship escalator and all those things. There's no playbook because everybody knows the playbook, so to speak. But in our kinds of relationships, we have to have those conversations. I totally agree. If monogamous people communicated the way polyamorous folks do, there wouldn't be as many divorces.
The world's problems would be solved.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Everybody be polyamorous. We'll solve world peace. Casey, let me ask you really quick. if there is some bisexual woman who is looking to, get into a partnership, and is approached by a couple, what are some things that you would recommend? What are some things that you would say, hey, look, this is where like I went wrong. These are some mistakes that I made. And these are some things that you will want to look out for and address early on.
Yeah, so I think that some of the big things, at least from the beginning, whenever I was kind of dabbling in this, it was very exciting and it was different and it was new and unique, which I think is kind of, you let your guard down probably more than you would whenever you're just dating. And this was me always being monogamous and then kind of making that transition. And so it was exciting. And I do feel like I think put up with things or accepted things that I don't think I ever would have in any other, situation. In my previous relationship, it was very much like, well, we're married and we're a couple and this is like great also. But I think that there was always kind of that precedence of our relationship over yours. And, if someone wants to participate in polyamory that way, it's all up to, I think that's, the biggest thing. Everyone does poly differently. But just holding yourself to a high standard of respect and not letting people be predatory towards you. And I will 100% say, probably out of, we'll say 1,000 couples, well, let's just go with that statistics alone. If I come across 1,000 couples, as a single woman who was interested in their relationship, I would say there maybe be a few, maybe 5 that I would even give the time of day, because a lot of people don't do it right. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it just feels icky. Like you read these people's profiles and, oh, well, we're looking for a third woman. They're like, I want a girlfriend so that my husband and I can spoil, and like all of these things that are just like, it doesn't feel like you would never normally accept that if you're dating anyone, of right. Just like being kind of talked down upon or objectified. Like, it's like, oh, it's like a plaything, like a toy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, I'm going to play with it for a little while, but ultimately like he's my husband. And so we're going to, or right. Just, so there was a lot of things that it's pretty easy to spot the red flags of whenever couples are seeking a single woman. I think probably the biggest thing that probably stood out about Rachael and Aaron's profile, and this was Rachael's profile specifically, that said, I'm Rachael, I'm with my husband Aaron, and they were saying, we're looking for a very healthy, ethical triad relationship, or bringing someone as an equal third, and we're like essentially kind of saying like we're willing to do the work. We're this is what our ideal situation, but we're kind of open to putting in the work that needs to be done. And I thought that was something that it just felt different. Like even from the second that I messaged, and it was, and I actually reached out first, which I never do, because I found them so interesting. And even just like in that short bio, you could tell it wasn't just another unicorn hunter. It wasn't just someone nice. Looking for a hookup or whatever. It was very, it felt very authentic, and it felt very real and very safe early on. And yeah, I definitely think just follow your instincts and trust your gut as the single woman, and also just put like the safeguards in place. I mean, I'm your huckleberry. I was always texting my friends, hey, here's where I'm going, here's who I'm meeting. And because I do think that there is still some level of, risk, of just being a single woman dating. And that's like anything. Like, it doesn't matter if it's poly, if it's mono. Always tell people whenever you're going somewhere and meeting someone. So,
great advice. Common sense. Great advice for sure. Rachael, similar question to you. What are some mistakes that you made, whether it was with Casey or with anybody else that you might have dated beforehand? I don't know if there was anybody else, but mistakes that you and Aaron made along the way that you learned from, that, and maybe from your psychologist background, giving a little bit extra of what a couple might be able to do if they're looking for this type of relationship, to do it right, to do it ethically.
Probably it's sort of similar along the lines of what I was just saying, but even as much research and education as we thought we had done and tried to go into this, you don't know what you don't know. And being able to take feedback and be open to self-reflection and having some awareness, things being pointed out to you, as much as I view myself as someone who can help resolve conflict for other people when it's internally, and I think, oh, we're doing it all right, we're doing just fine. It's humbling when you're not, especially when you think you're trying and you don't get it right, to be able to say, that's okay, we can learn from this and we can still grow. But to own it and to be okay with that. And I think, I don't really know the best way to describe it, because the couple's privilege inherently, or the unicorn hunting, happens to often come because a couple is looking to find someone that will satisfy both of them, right? And so even in thinking about this, going back, Aaron and I had two separate profiles, and we were both dating separately per se, and connecting and meeting people. And, if it all jived, that was obviously the idea. But I think going into it, there was this hope and this optimism that we would find someone that would drive all three of us and equally. And as much as we hit the money bucket, hit the lottery or whatever, won the lottery in this situation, we all do understand that this is very, very unique. There was a discrepancy, and Casey and I, and we'll all talk about it now, we hit it off and we had chemistry much quicker and much stronger than she and Aaron did. Not that it wasn't there, but we invested and we put a lot of effort and energy in making sure that we were growing, at the time, 4 separate relationships. Casey and Aaron, and me and Casey and Aaron and I still have ours, as well as the 3. But I read recently in a poly group that there's really 5 relationships, and you as your solo person or independent relationship itself being so important. And I think I would have liked to have gone back and maybe even put more effort into that, and what do each of us individually want, not as much as what do Aaron and I want. And that was hard. Again, I think it's so much of its history, and as much as we wanted to, it was hard to tease that apart sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, you hit on it though. Fostering those separate relationships though was the key to making this work, because it was something that, we went on early on, and even still today, we still go on our individual 2 off dates. And from the beginning, we were going on dates with 2 people as well, just so that, you want to make sure to foster those relationships. And to some extent, you want to give yourself room to grow that 2 off relationship just as much as the 3 together. Because if any 2 of those fail, then obviously the triad as a whole fails, not necessarily, any of the other parts of that, but ultimately, the triad fails. And so, just opening it up and making sure that we were putting and investing into those separate relationships as well. And we lucked out for sure.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. It sounds also like the 3 of you are in a closed triad. Is that right? So
Yes.
None of you are dating outside of. So, okay.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
We left the communication lines open. If that ever changes, if someone has an interest, but it's not a veto power, no, not happening. But none of us have any particular desire. And so it works well for all 3 of us at the time being.
Cool. So the other side of that question is, what does the future hold? I mean, what is, what does it look like? What I guess, what plans do you have, since you're talking about, there's each of you individually that you want to make sure that you focus on who you are in your autonomous, self-sufficient way. But at the same time, there's, hopes and plans and adventures to go on and all these things. So what does the future hold, for the 3 of you individually and as a triad?
I can start because, that has been something that's come up several times in discussion, and each of us do have some individual differences. I have that adventure spirit. I don't like to be locked down and staying in one place for any length of time, too long amount of time. And
COVID must have really sucked for you.
Yeah. And so I've been vying for the next place that we get to move. And so that might be my solo interest and adventurous spirit, but within the context of the triad, being open-minded to what possibilities could exist and what would everyone like to do in that spirit, but within the context of what's feasible and logistically capable.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I always bring it up. I mean, I feel like at some point, obviously Rachael and Aaron are legally married, and laws today say that we can't obviously get married as three people or even, two in addition. But I think potentially at some point, maybe having some kind of union ceremony and maybe taking that kind of next step as well, because, at the end of the day, like, I still want the wedding. I still want like the commitment. And so, yeah, maybe something like that too.
I'm just curious here, just spitballing. Feel free to tell me to shut the hell up. If and when you do that, is it going to be like a big thing with family and, the whole works?
We'll see. I think that if anything, probably going to be some kind of destination type of thing. And I think everyone's families will be invited, and all of our friends. And yeah, I think it's
right. People will show up. The ones that are our family today and support us and love us will be there. And those who aren't, that's okay too. Yeah.
Got your victory dance? Well, I got it right here. Yeah.
Winning. I love it. Rachael, Casey, thank you both so much again for hanging out with me, for letting me probe it at the two of you with some questions, maybe a little uncomfortable, whatever. But thank you. Is there anything that I missed? Is there any final thoughts that you might want to leave with our audience?
I would say that, we're just grateful to be able to come on here and share our story. And part of, I see the IG up here, Triad and True, and some of our other social media platforms are really just to continue to educate and bring awareness and hopefully destigmatize some of the myths and beliefs and misconceptions and whatnot that's out there. And so this has been another great opportunity to help show it's just real people having real lives that are fun and loving and healthy.
Just more people.
Just more people. All righty. Perfect. Casey, anything that you'd like to leave?
No, I think she covered it.
Perfect. Well, thank you both again. And yes, to our audience, definitely follow Rachael, Aaron, and Casey at Triad and True on Instagram. Did you mention that there was also a YouTube? Should we be looking for
YouTube, TikTok, all of the Facebook? Triad and True.
You'll find us everywhere.
Yeah, we like to do very poly-specific content, especially on our TikTok. So yeah, if you want to check that one out.
Perfect. All righty. Well, again, thank you both. Really appreciate your time and look forward to chatting again.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, James.
Thank you. And thank you, as always, to our live audience for tuning in. As a reminder, when we're live, you get no commercial interruptions, but the same can't be said for the podcast downloads. So if you want to avoid the commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us live Monday through Wednesday, 2:30 Pacific time, or sign up for Patreon, where you'll get access to our commercial-free RSS feed and support the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and wherever it is that you download your podcast if you haven't already, and please leave us a review. We'll really appreciate it. That is all we have got for you all today. Thank you, as always, and until next week.
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website or by subscribing at patreon.com/practicingpolya.